All right, well, first of all, I just want to welcome everybody back. This is going to be the second panel of the evening. So we got three panels. This is the middle. This is the meat in the sandwich. So no pressure.
No pressure.
But I told you when we first got started that it was going to be very important that we deal with two big disruptive waves that are coming through American society, global society. One, I said, would be medical technology, and the other would be artificial intelligence. And the reality is we have on this panel two leaders who can talk about both equally well and who have a tremendous track record in terms of their own pathway and their own ability to see the future and to make change. And so I want to first welcome my brother Michael Penn. He is the CEO of Terma.io. Give a round of applause for him and for his company. I love saying CEO.
I like hearing it.
That's good. And CEO's getting popular now, too.
Yeah.
And you don't have on the thing, you have another title, I believe, is MD. So you have a medical doctor and a CEO. So give him 2 rounds of applause. Another round of applause for Michael Penn. And then secondly, we also have Michael Robinson, who is with Microsoft Corporation. He's the Vice President of U.S. Health and Life Sciences. I like health and life, so give him a round of applause. So, you know, you guys can read the panel, you can read the introduction yourself, but you both have tremendous insight into the future, where things are going. But before we talk about the future, I always like to ground, if we can, a little bit in the past. What is it that has brought you guys, you could be focused on anything, you could be doing anything, you could be making money anywhere. Michael, you both named Michael, so I got Michael Penn. Why are you, with your talent, with your level of opportunity, focusing on the things you're focusing on?
That's a big, big question. So I guess the simplest way to describe it is I love technology, and I didn't realize how deep that ran for me really into the last 5 years of my life. But there's something about being at the leading edge of knowledge, the leading edge of innovation, that just sets me on fire. So that's sort of the technical piece of it. But the other piece is what I get excited about is technology is at a point now where it can empower people in a way that it never could before. And so to me, to be at the nexus of where technology is and then empowering the individual on so many different levels. So that's kind of why I am where I am.
And you have this distinction between wellness and the healthcare industry. Can you talk a little bit about wellness and how you came to that distinction? You're focused on wellness.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about your company, too.
Okay, so our company is called Terma.io, and we are an emotional intelligence company. And I have to give kudos to the founder of the company, a gentleman named Samuel Dismond, he's also an MD, who developed a way to encode emotional content or emotional information into computer language. And so we hope to leverage that information, that software, to make us more emotionally intelligent. So that's the purpose, or that's our mission of Terma.io.
Now, when you say emotionally intelligent, does that mean somebody calls you out your name and you're intelligent enough not to slap them in the face? What do you mean?
That's one example. That's one example.
Because I get emotional and I stop being intelligent.
Well, so I think by the chuckles, we all can appreciate, we've all been there. And our emotions are some of the most challenging things to manage, but in fact, some of the most important things to manage to be successful in life. And to me, what's exciting about our technology is that it's grounded in biology. Ultimately, our emotions are biology. And so because it's biology, it means that we all share the same fundamental emotions. And if you think about what we believe the world needs today, is we need to remember that we are more alike than we are different. And we believe that it's through emotional intelligence that can facilitate that reawakening.
Well, how do you make money off of that?
That's a great question. So I think we're an early stage company, so we're still in the process of building the technology, but I'll give you an example. How many of you are parents? Parents of teenagers?
Almost.
How successful are you at communicating with your teenagers? Not very. As an example, or how many, so we're all married. Who has challenges at times communicating with their spouse? I'll just raise my...
I'm scared to raise my hand.
I can't answer that question.
No comment.
I know.
Plead the fifth.
So managing emotions can be challenging, and what we need, I think, is real-time reminders of where we are, and sometimes more importantly, where the other person is with whom we're communicating. And so the vision for Terma.io is to actually have a technology that listens to your conversations with that emotional lens and can actually prompt you and say, Michael, you need to, your wife is trying to communicate with you. So the idea is to real time, or sometimes I don't necessarily like being put on the spot, and so I like the idea of being able to review a conversation in my own private space, and I can get called out in private, right? And then you can sort of develop and grow from there. But ultimately, when I talk about wellness, it's reminding us that, yes, you can be in the hospital, you can be in the clinic, but wellness is determined outside of those settings, right? It's determined by the quality of our relationships. It's determined by the quality of how we understand ourselves. And I think it's about time that technology helps us do that.
Great, great. Very powerful. But first of all, give him a round of applause just for even, I mean, this is some, I told y'all. So, I mean, that would be amazing, you know, if your watch would like zap you or something before she did, you know.
That's the goal, man.
So, cloud source of the SmackDown. That'd be great. So, see, I learned something. Michael Robinson, since we got two Michaels up here, you know, give us a little bit of your background, your history, and why you're so focused on life and health. Two things that's hard to be against.
Yeah, so much like Michael, I'm a technologist at heart, really passionate about what technology can bring. Our mission as a company is to empower people and organizations, right, to do more. But I was managing a business here in New York, which was one of our largest businesses, and I tell people all the time, I'm selling to GE and American Express and Citibank, and those are all great companies, and they do great things with our technology. But I had the opportunity to take a role managing our business in the Middle East and Africa. And so I got a very different perspective of what technology can do to bridge gaps, to be innovative, because, you know, the difference between Middle East and Africa is that, you know, they have all the money in the world and they can do whatever they want in terms of innovation. And then you have this huge disparity in sub-Saharan Africa where there's just challenge around basic infrastructure and those kinds of things. And so going through that process, I spent 4 years managing that business, but going through that process, it made me really understand the impact that technology could have on disparate communities. And so coming back to the US, I looked specifically for a role that could impact individuals in disparate communities through the use of technology. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough to get this role to manage our US health business, and there are two parts to that. One is I'm a sales guy at heart. And so I sell technology and make sure that people use our technology across the board. But secondly, I have a piece of the business that I call the factory. And it's really about the factory. It's about how you bring innovation to market. And so I think we live in a very interesting time in the healthcare industry. There are three things. You talked about the personal engagement, or what was the phrase again?
Quantified self.
Quantified self.
That's when you have these gadgets. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Quantified self. You have disruption from a policy perspective, so from a regulatory and a policy perspective, and then the advent of technology. So having technology available anytime, anywhere, have really created an opportunity, particularly in healthcare, to be very disruptive. And so, you know, whereas when I first took this role 4 years ago, we had traditional partnerships with the J&Js of the world and those types of organizations, which we still do, but now we look at really disruptive organizations in terms
Like
of
what?
So there's a gentleman in the audience who's running a health accelerator in Miami around health disparity. So they're looking for startup companies that they can bring through this accelerator focused on healthcare.
And so you're partnered up with them. How big is the factory? How many people in it? How much money's in it?
So the factory, well, let me go back. And, we spend about $10 billion a year in R&D at
I'm sorry?
Microsoft. 10B in R&D. And
I see why Andrea invited you here. Go ahead.
And a lot of that research is focused on health initiatives and health care. So the factory for me is about 50 people, but it's a significant part of our business. And when I say 50, I'm going into our research organization as well, and we have about 80 active initiatives going on from a research perspective.
What are you most excited about? What do you see? Listen, you're somebody, you're an expert, and have people working for you who are experts in big data and artificial intelligence, all these things, and you're trying to take these big new innovations and you're focusing them now on wellness, on health, on life. What are you excited about?
So ultimately, I think the opportunity to really take the individual and put them in the context of their reality, right? And so what I mean by that is I can get up in the morning and there can be a wealth of data about what Michael does or is going to do for the rest of the day that's available and it's contextual. So if I'm at home, it registers one way. If I'm out or going to get a plane, it will register a different way.
Wait, now you see, you already lost me now. Hold on a second. So you wake up in the morning. Break it down for me. You got to be simple with me now. You wake up in the morning. How do you get this information? Just explain. See, I don't think people understand. You live in a different world.
Yeah.
Big data, artificial intelligence, these ubiquitous devices, the Internet of Things, all of these things surrounding an individual can either create a situation where data is being torn from them,
right.
Somebody else is making money off the data, or that data can be used to empower that person.
Exactly.
Now, how are you? Are you the thief, or the or the empower, or both? Help me on that. How's this gonna work?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be perfectly honest. So I could open my refrigerator today, and that can tell me, by how long I keep the door open or what I actually come out of the refrigerator with. There's the possibility of that, collecting that data and then using it in the context of they know who I am, as well as any.
My refrigerator gonna be a snitch.
Or you could be walking down the street and you make that left into McDonald's as opposed to the right into Whole Foods, right? So those things are all contextual, and I believe that we'll get to a point where, as you pointed out, the devices will be ubiquitous enough that information will come readily. And,
will come readily to whom?
So the ultimate goal, from my perspective, is to, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but is to make sure that you gain insights as the individual. And so it should be for your purposes, not for any third party or nefarious purposes.
So both of you have a passion to use technology for good. You guys are kind of like Tony Stark. You're trying to figure out how to use all this stuff for good. Before we get to the question I'm going to ask you, which is about how other people can follow your lead, follow your pathway, I just want to talk about you individually. You talked about emotions, emotional intelligence. I would imagine being an African American, is that safe to say? I used to be African American, I know a little bit about that. Now I'm just a commentator on CNN. African American, male, MD, CEO. There's probably some emotions. Put the smartphone down for a second. How do you deal with that? What are the human technologies that you found to be helpful in your journey? Because nobody sitting here can't relate to being in that situation.
Yeah. So where should I start? So I'm just going to be as transparent as I can possibly be. The journey for me has really been about leaving behind defining myself by my degrees or my accomplishments and my titles. And that was an emotional journey, because what I realized is that that weight was heavy, and I was putting too much pressure on myself. and ultimately was disconnected from my purpose. So emotions for me came bubbling forth and manifested as clinical depression, which I had to work through. And ultimately, I realized that it was self-induced. So part of my practice is eating right, staying in the gym, meditating consistently. You know, there's a lot of data now on mapping sort of the neural changes, right? The changes in our brain that happen with meditation. It grounds us. So that really has helped me manage mine. So it's in part where the technology comes from.
Everybody says you're supposed to meditate. Somebody like yourself who actually has a real practice, is it 5 minutes a week? Is it an hour every day? I mean, how will you maintain something like that?
So for me, at a minimum, it can be 5 minutes twice a day, but ideally it's 20 minutes twice a day, morning and evening.
And when you are in the situation you find, you next, so get ready.
I know.
He's like, oh, maybe.
I'm on an emotional journey.
We all are.
Yeah, but so listen, man, you're in this situation now. You found things that work for you. The gym works for you. The meditation pillow works for you. The right diet works for you. You're now trying to figure out a way to bring technology to bear on that. Help me understand how a regular person, like me or somebody in the room, is going to benefit. You mentioned the wife not having the bug zap. You're going to get bug zapped by your watch. That's very helpful. Tell me what else emotional intelligence. You are an emotionally intelligent person, dealing now with emotionally intelligent technology. What else can we expect from people like yourself that will make our lives better?
Repeat the question.
What else are you, so I know it's an early startup company, but what I like about the company is it's a company that has an emotionally intelligent person driving emotionally intelligent technology. I trust that more. Somebody talks about artificial intelligence, but I'm not sure if they're intelligent. See, we have, I think, a danger of having a lot of data and very little wisdom. And when you have a lot of data and very little wisdom, you can have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
When you said what you said
Yeah.
about your own emotional journey, it gives me a certain level of more confidence, more comfort. That was maybe emotionally intelligent for you to do. But now that I'm a little bit more comfortable, what do you see out there that technology could do in the hands of people like yourself that would make life better, either with your company or any other company?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I'm really excited about where technology is. So, we talk about the quantified self. We talk about technology empowering people. So there are a couple of apps that I use that I like a lot. So one is a meditation app called Headspace, right? Andy Puddicombe, I think, was the founder. And then there's a newer one that combines meditation, mindfulness, and yoga, which is called Will, W-H-I-L. So those are kind of on the personal side, but I also get really excited about some of the medical technologies. So there's a really awesome company founded by a woman out of Stanford called Theranos, right? So it's a lab-based technology. So she's managed to really redefine kind of the lab medicine business with technology. So she's got a microfluidics platform that can take minute quantities of blood and get it the same quality and robustness. It's faster, and it's infinitely cheaper. And so what that enables is a whole new dimension of medicine, because you can afford to monitor people more closely, right? So it's this monitoring concept. So I see it's just nothing but potential, right? And if technology continues to get cheaper, then it becomes more and more accessible to people.
So why don't you give me a sense of both why, on the emotional side, the wisdom side. With you, I'll say the wisdom side of things. We had a conversation earlier, and you're very concerned about how these things could go. What are some of the positive and negative impacts we should be looking for?
Yeah, so I think to Michael's point, we have to earn the trust of the public and the individuals to trust that the technology is going to be used in the right way. And part of that is that I think technology companies that are developing these applications, or whether you're a cognitive computing company that's storing the data and doing the analysis on it, you have to be very clear and transparent about what the purpose and the use of that information will be.
So that's going to be, so looking at the positive, so this is coming anyway, so some
Right.
best practices are being very transparent about
Right.
what it's for.
That, I believe, is just table stakes, to be honest with you. I think it's more about creating an environment where people can be active and engaged in the management of not just chronic disease, but in wellness as well. And so both emotional as well as physical health, to be able to manage that in a way that is within your work style, within your lifestyle. And so having the technology ubiquitous enough that it allows you to do that in the style that you want to do. So I don't meditate, but if you wanted to meditate, you have that available of the technology.
Just a quick point about the other trend that's happening is giving us control over our data, right? So there's a whole movement within medicine, right, for patients to actually control and move their data. So that's another piece of it.
There are big health disparities right now in the present system. African American women in particular get treated very badly. There's all these bad outcomes. In this new world, with all, everybody can have more data. Everybody can have access to more apps. How can health disparities be reduced in the world that you're trying to build?
Yeah, so one thing, I think it's about access. And so making sure that people have access to information as well as to some of those applications that can help them, reduce some of the things. You talked a lot on the last panel about education and educating people, what Earl was talking about, I think can be done through the use of technology. But I also think it's important that people take that personal accountability, and that today is something that is not common in our communities, I'll say. And so whether you call it crowdsourcing or shaming, but having an active community involved in your care, I think will help us change that dynamic as well.
You guys are interested in the wearable stuff. Now, to me, when I'm thinking about our communities, you talk about wearables. You're talking about fashion, you're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff that we might be able to lean in on.
Right.
Talk to us about the future of wearable technology, how that intersects all this.
Well, you mentioned fashion. You take companies like Under Armour that have now gear that will allow you to take biometric information. And so they can, again, feeding that information to a cloud-based system that allows them to collect and analyze that data is something that is becoming more and more ubiquitous. And so I think, although today we have wearables that generally have a shelf life of 2 to 3 months, after a while you get tired of it. I know my personal one, I get tired of it telling me I only sleep 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
I know that, I've known that for years. I don't need my device to tell me that, right? And so, as those become more intelligent, and provide more relevant data that can then bring insights back to me about how do I correct my sleep pattern. I think that those are the things that we see in the future.
So, you're looking for partners.
Yes.
You're looking for people to invest in. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so again, I'm a sales guy, so what we look for is we have the cognitive computing capacity to be able to help startups bring their idea to market faster, and as well as some of the things that they might have to code in, like Michael's company codes in the emotional intelligence. Those things can be captured through machine learning and other technologies that now will continually learn, so that they don't have to code that in for the next set of emotions that they want to include in their technology. And so having people have that technology available, like I told Michael earlier that one of the things that's most exciting for me is that compute power is ubiquitous. So whether it's a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon, that kind of capacity wasn't available to entrepreneurs even 5 years ago. And so making that available, and selfishly as Microsoft, we want those companies to build on our platform and to use our technology to do that.
We appreciate both of you, and part of the reason we wanted to have you guys sitting side by side. Microsoft is a global brand. You can say Microsoft on 5 continents, and people know exactly what you're talking about. And yet they are struggling to figure out the best way to deal with this onrushing future and all of this change, and need partners and help and support to do that. This is somebody with $10 billion still needs help. And then you have a company that's so new, I mispronounced the name, sitting here beside him, which I imagine it may not be a unicorn, but it's going to make a tremendous difference. And note the level of innovation for this company is not just innovative in terms of bringing together the emotional intelligence with the technology with the people who need it, but even at the level of how the company is being structured and thought through, there's innovation there. And they are looking for partners. And so when you are in a world where the biggest people in the world, the titans of industry, are walking around trying to find new opportunities, new investments, and new partners, and some of the best, freshest thinking, it's literally a couple of bleeding edge companies are here looking for the same thing, I think we should be a lot more hopeful. And I think we should frankly be a lot more proud of the fact that in our communities, we got folks who can answer some of these questions.
Right.
Their mouths are hanging open at how brilliant, how creative, how smart, how determined, how willing to work through the night sometimes our young people are. We have genius in our communities. Absolutely. Genius. And we have companies built on genius, looking for genius. The reason we brought you guys here, the most disruptive business model that we can have is to disrupt the lie that we are not ready. We are ready for change, and we're going to make change going forward. So thank you for being here, and thank our panelists. Thank our panelists. Really good.
Thank you, man.
Really good.